So today we're going to learn how to shamelessly Photoshop our own portraits, because if you're like me, you don't like to have baggy little sacs under your eyes or shadows or too many wrinkles. So I tend to do a little light touch-up to portraits that I use for various purposes, and also I do this for my friends very happily. So here we go. A couple of things that you can do in Photoshop to make any photo look better. So I'm going to start with this photo that I found. This is just something that I lifted off the internet, royalty free. It's not a person I know. It is not me. And she is by no means looking old or ugly in any way, but we're going to still touch her up. So where to start? We'll have a look around here. I'd like to maybe soften these little wrinkles around her eyes, maybe sort of soften this up a bit, maybe work on that complexion a little bit. Maybe take down the chin a little bit. So let's start. What I like to do is start with a lasso tool, and this is Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud, but you don't have to have this version, anyone will do. And what we're going to first start out with is just soften up some of these lines. We're going to smooth out a little bit of the wrinkles here using a very feathered lasso tool. So the first thing we're going to do is go up here to the feather. I'll take about a 5 pixel radius for the feather. And we're going to just start by drawing out a couple of little places where we want to just smooth out certain things. Now we don't want to do this too much, otherwise it doesn't look believable anymore. So we just want to pick a couple of highlight areas, just like this. And we're going to start by just blurring them a little bit, so it just eases that texture. What I like to do is get rid of the selection so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use Command H, and there he goes. No more selection. Then I go over to the filter. I choose blur. Now there are lots of blurs you can use. I tend to like Gaussian blur because you can really control it. Now that's a lot. We're not going to do it nearly that much. We're just going to take it down a little bit, because one of the tricks is to make sure it's believable, because if you do too much, it looks photoshopped, and we want to Photoshop without it looking like it's photoshopped. So I'm going to just do a teeny bit like this. There we go. So you can already tell that that's a little bit smoother now. We are also going to brighten it a little bit, so it stands out a little bit, has a little bit of a glow. So we go to Command U, will give us a lightness and saturation panel. Push up the lightness just a little bit, maybe rosy her up a little bit, push up the saturation a little bit. So that just pops out just a bit, looking nice. Good. All right, now let's have a look around here. They say you can always tell how old a lady is by her neck, so that's what we're going to work on next. So we're going to just grab this little area right in here. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to push Control F for filter. That's going to repeat the same filter that we used before, so it doesn't look too crazy. And there we go. So that's already a good start. Now, what I like to do is take down a little bit of these areas here. And by doing that, we're going to just take this tool right in here so we contain ourselves in this area. We can get a little bit closer if we want. Now, this is not a terribly high resolution, but it's good enough. And we have this nice feathered edge. We still have that 5 pixel feather, so if we make a little bit of a mistake, it won't hurt anybody. So I like to go to this brush tool, which you can change to kind of like an airbrush tool. And the way we do that is we go over here to the brushes. Now I have a crazy brush. I have this kind of spongy thing, but we're not going to do that. We're going to go to one of the more gentler brushes, something like this. And you can see it's pretty big, so I'm going to just take it down a little bit. You see that circle that we're working with there? Hardness is how you control how much of it goes in. And we're going to take that size down. That's about the right size. Okay. In addition, you can also change the opacity, so we can bring that down a little bit too, so it doesn't get too intense. The wonderful thing about this tool is you can press down the Alt key and you get a little dropper. So you can select a color that's really, really close to the color that you want, just go ahead and tap that in with your mouse, and then just tap lightly in the places that you need to go. Remember, we don't want to eliminate the wrinkles because otherwise it's not believable. And I'm going to do the same thing here. We're just going to select this area right here, go to our airbrush tool, and select a little piece of it just like that. And then we get rid of some of these harsh lines. You'll still have lines. Again, we do not want to get rid of all the lines. And see, that's already softening her up quite a bit. So there we go. Now, what if somebody has a nose that they feel is too big? Well, we can work on that. I don't like doing this, but sometimes you just have a nose that you want to work on. So what I do is I take that same feathered approach and I just copy it. Right? I take about half. I'm going to move this piece of the nose, this half of the nose, I'm going to move in 1 pixel over towards the other half. So it just comes in a little bit smaller. Now this lady has a beautiful nose, but I like to put my nose in a little bit once in a while. So what I do is I'm going to hold down the Alt and the Command key, and you see that the cursor changes to a little double, and it's going to copy it for me. So all I'm going to do is just push it in 2 pixels, up 1 over 1. I'm going to do the same with the other side. So it just comes a little bit closer, and I'm copying as I'm pulling it over. Now, you probably don't see very much difference, and if this were you and your portrait, you would probably notice right away because we are vain. The next thing we could do, now this is optional, we could just pump up the features a little bit in her eyes and eyebrows. So I'm just going to take a circle around the eyes, and this does not have a feather on it. Hold down the Shift key to have a second one, and you don't have to get it exactly right, but close enough is close enough. So we're going to get rid of that selection by pressing Command H, and then we're going to go to brightness and contrast, and we're going to punch up that contrast a little bit, right? So it really stands out. Those eyes then become a real center of focus for the image. Now let's give her one last thing we're going to do to this poor lady is we're just going to get some of this here a little bit darker. I'm going to put 2 little loops around her eyelashes just to darken those up so that they stand out a little bit more. So we're going to do, again, Command H is going to get rid of that selection. Command U is going to pull up this saturation panel, and we're just going to, very simple, just darken it a little teeny bit so we get a little bit more focus on that eye there. And we can also bring up the saturation somewhat. Okay, now that's looking a lot better. So, the new you. What do you think? We did that in just 10 minutes. Now don't tell anybody that you know how to do this now because your secret is safe until you tell somebody. So from now on you can slowly and quietly doctor your own photos in Photoshop. Good luck everybody. Bye now.